These are the stages of the people of Israel when they went out of the land of Egypt by their companies under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. Moses wrote down their starting places, stage by stage, by command to the Lord. These are their stages according to the starting places. They set out from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the day after the Passover, the people of Israel went out triumphantly in the sight of all Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom the Lord had struck down among them. On their gods also the Lord executed judgments. So the people of Israel set out from Ramesses and camped south of Succoth. And they set out from Succoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. And they set out from Etham and turned back to Pi Hahiroth, which is east of Baal Zephon. And they camped before Migdol. They set out from before Hahiroth and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness. And they went a 3-day journey in the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. And they set out from Marah and came to Elim. At Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. They set out from Elim and camped at the Red Sea. And they set out from the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They set out from the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dophah. And they set out from Dophah and camped at Alush. They set out from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They set out from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. And they set out from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. And they set out from Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. And they set out from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They set out from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. And they set out from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They set out from Libnah and camped at Rissah. And they set out from Rissah, camped at Kehelatha. And they set out from Kehelatha and camped at Mount Shepher. And they set out from Mount Shepher and camped at Haradah. And they set out from Haradah and camped at Makaloth. They set out from Makaloth and camped at Tahath. They set out from Tahath and camped at Terah. They set out from Terah and camped at Mithkah. They set out from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. They set out from Hashmonah and camped at Moseroth. And they set out from Moseroth and camped at Beni Jakan. They set out from Beni Jakan and camped at Hor Haggidgah. And they set out from Hor Haggidgah and camped at Jotbathah. And they set out from Jotbathah and camped at Abrona. They set out from Abrona and camped at Ezin-Geber. They set out from Ezin-Geber and camped in the wilderness of Zin, that is Kadesh. They set out from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor on the edge of the land of Edom. And Aaron the priest went up Mount Hor at the command of the Lord and died there in the 40th year after the people of Israel come out of the land of Egypt, on the first day of the 5th month. And Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. And the Canaanites, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negeb in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the people of Israel. And they set out from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmonah. They set out from Zalmonah and camped at Punun. They set out from Punun and camped at Oboth. And they set out from Oboth and camped at Ai Abrim in the territory of Moab. And they set out from Aim and camped at Gibbon Gad. And they set out from Gibbon Gad and camped at Almon Diblathaim. And they set out from Almon Diblathaim, and they camped in the mountain of Abrim before Nebo. And they set out from the mountains of Abrim and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. They camped by the Jordan for Beth Jeshimoth as far as Abdel Shittim in the plains of Moab. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of the Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, When you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all their figure stones and destroy all their metal images and demolish all their high places. And you shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given the land to you to possess, and you shall inherit the land by a lot according to your clans. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance, and to a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Whatever the lot falls for anyone, this shall be his. According to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. And if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, then those of them whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall trouble you in the land where you dwell. I will do to you as I thought to do to them. Numbers chapter 33.